of the, calling to order the Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 meeting of the Gig Harbor Arts Commission. First, we will do a roll call. I'll call out your names as I see you, and please just say present or here or cool or go Seahawks or whatever. Charlie Glock Jackson, Chair. Robin?
Here, present.
Robin Ovney, co-chair. Lynn Stevenson?
Lynn Stevenson, Commissioner.
Jennifer?
Here.
Jennifer Beard, Commissioner. Linda Sutherland, Commissioner.
Here.
And we have Josh Stecker, staff.
I'm here.
I see the mayor has just joined us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Kit Kuhn, mayor, and we have a guest, Stephanie Lyle, executive director of the Harbor History Museum. And I believe that the first order of our business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. So everyone has looked at those, I hope.
Yep.
I'm trying to find my, may I have a motion to approve? Are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 11th meeting.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jennifer. All in favor, just say aye, I guess.
Aye, I guess.
All right, I guess. Yeah, thanks. Smarty pants. And I see that Commissioner Samantha has just joined us. So thank you.
Yes, Samantha Kelly.
Yes, and let's see. Let us move on to a presentation by Stephanie Lyle, the Executive Director of the History Museum. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the time to share this idea with the Arts Commission. It's a kind of complicated idea, but there's some backstory to it. And for those of you that are familiar with the Harbor History Museum or the Gig Harbor Peninsula Historical Society, we've been around since 1964. Excuse me, opened the first museum in 1976, and then raised about $12 million to purchase and buy the property and build a new museum for the community, and opened it in 2010. So as we are looking at our next decade of operation, we're really looking seriously at how do we fund the museum into the future, as well as how do we provide additional support for cultural arts organizations throughout our area. And being a person who has worked in the nonprofit sector for pretty much my entire career, this is an ongoing challenge. And even post-COVID, we have to find ways for growth and change within our community in the type of support that we get for these organizations. So museums are considered one of the 4 pillars of a community, and that is schools, parks, libraries, and museums. And most often, all of these things were started by individuals, community rally to raise the money to build the first school or build the first library. And we have documentation of all that in our area here at the museum. But there's a logical growth to that. Even like with the growth of a volunteer fire department, for example, we now have a very robust fire department that's funded by property taxes. So this is a kind of a common progression within US government, state government, county government, that sort of thing. So this is something that I think is a really important idea to consider. So hopefully I'll be able to share my screen here and walk you through this presentation. Okay, all right. So the idea here is called the Peninsula Cultural Arts District. And what this does is it creates a special district that specifically is designed to fund our local museums and cultural tourism serving organizations. It's different from like lodging tax because it is based on either sales tax or property tax. And I'll get into the details of that in just a second. I did want to make a distinction that there is a difference between taxing districts and special designations. Currently, our taxing districts, and this is just some of them, but our schools are special taxing districts, parks are special taxing districts, and libraries. All three of those have been around for a long time. The library district actually goes back to 1946. The park district is a little bit newer. That is not in the city of Gig Harbor. That's like Penn Met Parks. Started about 2008 for actual public funding. So those are taxing districts, but the idea is that these are tax-based, not overlay districts, which again, I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. So the background of nonprofit funding, and I'm just stepping back for a second to provide a little bit of backstory for how nonprofits are funded in our community and around the state, because there's a whole bunch of different ways that nonprofits get started. And a lot of you are involved in nonprofit organizations already. So when you look at, oh gosh, let's start this cool thing, it has to always start with community drive. So almost all of our nonprofits are started with community funding and completely donation based. They are funded by contributions, donors, major gifts, grants. Projects are easy to fund. It's very difficult to find operations dollars. I think all of us have experienced that. The next step is municipally funded. Some of them are tax-based. So things like the State History Museum, for example, 67% of its entire operating budget comes from the state of Washington. So there are municipally funded museums, organizations that actually get their basic operations from a tax base and then have to raise money on top of that for special projects. Then there's hybrid funding, so municipal and community. That's another great example. The State History Museum, for example, is a state agency, but they are also funded by the community. So when they have special projects or whatever that need to be funded, then they can raise the money to do that because they have an arm that is a 501c3 that allows them to receive grant funding. The last way is huge endowments, and museums like the J. Paul Getty Museum, who they basically had to figure out ways to spend their money because the endowment was so huge. So these are things that are difficult to get. If you have a large endowment and it's managed well, you have operations funds for almost in perpetuity, but that's pretty rare. Honestly, there are a few museums and libraries around the country that are funded that way, but not very many. So a taxing district versus an overlay district is basically a taxing district is intended to generate funds for operations and basic community services. It's governed by state law. It's laws that exist on the state books in the RCWs that allow for the creation of taxing districts. Overlay districts are things that are typically non-regulatory. For example, local working waterfront. That's a great designation. It defines what we want in that particular area, but it isn't anything that's going to generate operating funds for the organizations that are in that section. Same with historic register. It's awesome. We have a city historic register, we have a county historic register, state, and the National Historic Register. And a number of our buildings, Schoolhouse, the Shenandoah, some of our net sheds, they're all on historic registers, which is great for historic designation, but doesn't generate funding. Sometimes it makes you eligible for various grant programs that you wouldn't otherwise be eligible for, but it's not going to guarantee any funding. Maritime Washington National Heritage Area, the latest sort of overlay district that's created all along the coastline of Washington State, is a fantastic program, and it's a national program, but here again, doesn't supply any particular funding for any of the organizations in that heritage area, but it does provide some unifying activities and potential for promotion and maybe someday down the road some grant programs, but it's not guaranteed. The Arts While Creative Districts are a fantastic program. Again, they're an overlay district, and none of these overlay districts, creating a taxing district does not prohibit the initiation of an overlay district. So there is, in fact, it actually enhances it, and vice versa. So the creative districts through the Arts Commission at state level, and Robin knows a lot about this program too, because about 10 different cities have come online in the last couple of years. So it's a really great designation, but here again, it is not providing any direct funding for the basic operations of the organizations in that district. And that's why this particular taxing district is being initiated, or we're trying to initiate it. And I will be candid and say that I think first step with the city is that the Arts Commission understands, appreciates, and can support this effort, because it has to go through a number of steps that I'll get to in a second too. So creating a taxing district is basically using existing legislation to broaden the community support. So you have two basic options. You have sales tax and you have property tax. In Gig Harbor, we also have the lodging tax fund, which is a totally separate thing. And then sales tax, again, a separate piece, but then schools, parks, and libraries are all funded with property tax predominantly. So to look at the options that we have for creating a levy or a taxing district that would support cultural arts in our area, we have two options. Cultural access is based on sales tax, and it's municipally based. It was originally initiated at the state level so that counties could create a program that provides cultural access to school kids to various cultural organizations, museums, and historic sites and whatnot. The best example of that, and actually the only example in Washington right now, is the city of Tacoma and the program called Tacoma Creates. And they were able to initiate that in Tacoma. And I think last year they funded about 51 different organizations. So it's a great program. They're actually looking at the potential of expanding that to the county level. But it also has some limitations, and it has a lot of very, very specific intentions and uses associated with those funds. So I think that's an interesting option. I'm not convinced 100% that it's the right option for us, because we have one municipality in our entire school district, and that's the city of Gig Harbor. So we have to look broader than that, at least our organization does, to look at what the support could be yield. So Cultural Arts Stadium and Convention District is the other option. It is property tax based. It is based on and operated by the county. So it has to be approved by the county council and put on the voter ballot. So that is same cultural access would also have to go on the voter ballot as well. But again, that's a little bit different. So I'm proposing the Cultural Arts District as an option for us in this area because we could have a wider reach throughout the entire Peninsula School District. And it, as state legislation, does have some governing guidelines that have to be adhered to in terms of the development of said district. But it also is a stronger yield now and into the future. I put some comparisons for property tax rates just so people understand where your property tax dollars are going. In our area, we pay $2.28 per 1,000 for schools, the school levy, and they can initiate special levies also for new schools and that sort of thing. These give you some points of reference. This particular taxing district, even though it's called Cultural Arts Stadium and Convention District, at the rate that it's at, it is never going to fund a stadium or a convention center. So I think it's really important to recognize that, but to not ignore the very first part of this, which is cultural arts and what it could do for the organizations in our area at that rate. And so you can charge up to 25 cents per 1,000. We're actually proposing 10 cents per 1,000. And I'll get to more specifics about that in a second. So what's the potential yield? So this is where what they say, the rubber meets the road kind of thing, because you really have to look at what is the need and what is the yield. If the need does not match up with the yield, then you have to modify the need or you have to modify the yield. So in cultural access, that is sales tax based, and in our area, based on the calculations that we were able to get through the city finance department and whatnot, but it's just for, because cultural access is municipally based, it would yield around $1 million a year in theory. Cultural arts stadium and convention district would yield about 1.6 million per year, and that's just calculated at 10 cents per 1,000. So that has a great potential for really serving a lot of our cultural arts organizations. It's not going to build a new performing arts center. It's probably not going to buy property, but it really would do amazing things for the organizations in our area. And this is all throughout Peninsula School District. So just to give you the reference points on the RCWs for these, cultural access is 36,160, cultural arts is 67.38. One thing that I will point out is that in many other states throughout our country, we have state legislation that allows for the creation of museum districts. Washington State does not have that legislation. So this is what we could do immediately, probably going to be 2 years down the road to actually get this passed and to see any return from it. But we wouldn't have to go through a decade of trying to initiate new state legislation to create museum districts throughout Washington. And you know, that's something that really has to have traction at a lot of different levels to make it happen. And while there is probably about 20 other states in the country that do have museum district legislation, again, Washington does not. So we have to look at what does exist and what are the tools that we have that we can use to move these organizations forward. So the stated purpose of the Cultural Arts Stadium and Convention District is really the creation, renovation, and it's covered up here, sorry, the operations of cultural arts stadium and convention facilities benefiting all the citizens of the state. I will mention, and you know, I know that you all can read this for yourself, but there is, in studying this particular convention or stadium and convention district, and why I call it the Cultural Arts District, because it has been tested by some various communities around the state to fund stadiums and to fund convention centers, but there's just not enough yield from this particular legislation to make a dent in creating a stadium or a convention center. So if we look at it and we take those off the slate and we look at what it can do for cultural arts, it changes the game. And so I think that that's something that hasn't been tried before. And I am all about trying new things to do the best that we can for our heritage and arts organizations in our area. So I think this has great potential. But it has not been passed anywhere in Washington State for those reasons, because if you're going to build a stadium or you're going to build a convention center, you'll probably create I believe it's called a public facilities district that has a much higher yield and a lot less legislation associated with it. Let me just move here. So this just gives you a basic comparison between these two different programs that are potentials in Washington State, cultural access versus the cultural arts district. And the reason why I put this comparative chart together is because I've also been working with Inspire WA, which is a big advocacy organization for arts and culture organizations throughout the state. And they were very instrumental in helping Tacoma get Tacoma Creates passed. And those folks are very invested in cultural access for a lot of really good reasons. My case to them is that I think that works fantastically in a municipality. I'm not sure it works as well in areas throughout our state that are more rural, that don't necessarily have a large municipality to help manage all of the ins and outs of collecting and distributing these tax funds. So the Cultural Arts Stadium and Convention District, because it's property tax base, allows rural districts to operate more like libraries and the library system, so that they're collecting the funds at the county level and dispersing them to organizations that are part of this cultural arts district. So our case here, the legislation that would allow this to happen again is 67.38. And what we did is we've studied a number of different models around the country because I think it's important to cast your net a little wider to say what's happening in other places. And in Oregon, in Multnomah County, one of the great models is the model that funds or partially funds the Oregon Historical Society. Unlike the Washington State Historical Society, the Oregon Historical Society it's a state agency, but it is not fully funded at the same level as, say, for example, other state historical societies. So what they did is they went to their county and they said, we'd like to initiate this taxing district, and not only will it support the Oregon Historical Society, it will support 4 other local historical societies as well. And it passed with an overwhelming majority of support. Now, that is the Portland area. They are very pro-arts there. So that may be part of that case. But another case is the Massillon Museum in Ohio. It's similar to the Arbor History Museum in size, and started by, a founding family of the city. And they were looking at, how do we grow? How do we continue to serve our community? What's that going to look like? And Ohio happens to have legislation available that allows them to create a taxing district and fund that museum. And now they are at a budget of about $1 million a year. They provide incredible programs to their community. Their staff all make living wages, which is really great. And they can support a lot of different arts and heritage programs throughout the whole city and, in fact, the county. So I think looking at a farther field for other examples is a helpful exercise because it really helps us see what's possible. And, almost everything we think of has been tried before somewhere. And if you can find those examples, it helps a lot. So what we're trying to do is create a community baseline for operational support of our historical societies and our public serving cultural nonprofits. These are facilities that are open and available to the public, and also organizations that provide just public education, whether they are operating a facility or not. We're also looking to construct a 150-seat lecture hall and performance space on the museum campus. So that's the basic idea. Of course, there's more to it, as we'll get to here. But just on average, if you have a $500,000 house, your cost per year is $50. And that literally is the same amount as a membership here at the Arbor History Museum. So it really is not a huge tax burden for anybody. And it sure does make a huge difference for what we were able to provide in our community. Just a second here. Okay, so this is the Peninsula School District, and I just wanted to present this map because it shows both the Gig Harbor Peninsula and the Key Peninsula. And why is this important? Because the legislation dictates that the boundaries of a cultural arts district under that RCW have to mirror either the local school district or the community college district. Our community college district actually goes over into North Tacoma. And so we focus particularly on the Peninsula School District. Now, say for example, Fox Island Historical Society doesn't want to have anything to do with this. They can opt out, and then we just omit them from the district. We've actually been in conversations with them and would love to have them be a part of this because they operate a museum and do a fantastic job of it for that particular community. And like parks, you have these different facilities around, and they all need to have some operating funds and support. Volunteer bases are getting harder to come by. Our population is aging, and we need to be able to bring in actual professionals that are site managers and that sort of thing, if that's helpful to that organization. So who benefits from all this stuff? Obviously the community and all of the visitors that come here. So I think that's something that's really important, but why is it important? And, for local historical societies, a lot of people look at a museum and say, well, if they're not, changing exhibits all the time and have the doors open, they're not doing anything. And the truth is that's actually not true. There's a lot of historic preservation that's happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of outreach to our schools and communities that may be happening that even if the doors are shut. So I think that certainly operating support makes it more possible to be more open, but it also allows us to expand our reach in schools, in community centers, and even doing presentations to other county groups and various arts organizations. So there's a lot of different ways to do what we do, right? We all know that. Pierce County would manage the funds of this particular district, and there would be a comprehensive plan that is developed for it that would describe exactly how the funds would be allocated. The vision right now is that the Harbor History Museum, the Fox Island Historical Society, the Key Peninsula Historical Society would get direct operating funds, and then other organizations, there would be a grant pool specifically for operations or capital. They could apply for either one, and the city would be an eligible candidate to apply because they own properties that are cultural tourism properties. And so then there could be funding available for special projects and operations of those organizations. So I think it's a really important thing to look at in terms of the potential impact. And how does it affect the city? Really, because Gig Harbor is the primary municipality in this area, the city has to be all in or all out. And I'm glad the mayor is on with us today. Thank you for being here, because that's something that we would have to present to both to the mayor and to the council for their approval to move forward on putting this on the ballot for voters to even approve. Because the first step is, of course, getting the city to approve it and then take it to the county council. We can also do it by petition and signatures, and I'm kind of inclined to do both, but we're really just in the beginning stages of this and beginning some surveys with various folks around the community to see if they would support it. If there is flat out no support for this, then obviously we probably wouldn't continue pursuing it. If there is support for it, then we would definitely want to move forward. Linda, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got three actually, and I don't know how.
Okay.
I'll hit you with all three and then go into it a little bit more. So the one question is like, can I get the slides? I guess they might have been sent out. The second one is your background. And the third one is what's the presentation purpose here?
Okay,
So
great.
your background then is like, do you work for the History Museum? And I guess this works into what's the purpose of this presentation. Are you, yeah, I guess, just tell me why you're bringing this to us at this time.
Well, I'm glad you asked. Yeah.
And you are a person that works at the History Museum. You don't own it or anything. And you're the
I'm
fund
the executive
person.
director of the History
Yep.
Museum. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead then.
Yeah, so my background is, longtime museum person. I actually started in a small museum in Vermont and have also worked in publications, exhibition development. I was the director of education at the Washington State History Museum for about 17 years. I worked at the J. Paul Getty Museum down in California for 4 years as an education specialist and project manager for some of their educational spaces. I worked at the National Museum of American History for a special project on their transportation hall. I was the exhibit coordinator for one of the many Lewis and Clark traveling exhibits that was put together by the state of Washington, Kansas, and Virginia. So I grew up in Gig Harbor and so I moved away and came back many times and was hired in 2017, first as the curator of collections and exhibitions here at the Harbor History Museum, and then shortly thereafter as the director. So I'm a huge advocate for historic preservation and cultural arts. This has really been my love and what I believe in. It is not an easy job by any stretch of the term, and I will not be joking about that. I have to raise approximately $350,000 to $500,000 every year just to keep this museum going. And it's the hardest job I've ever had. So that's my background, and that's me being very candid.
And that's sort of the major part of your job then, is raising funds. So you know the ins and outs of how all this stuff goes, is sort of where I was going to with this then. You know how to do this. This is great, a great presentation. But then your presentation reason was to just inform us of how this works.
Well, here's my take. I really admire and appreciate all the work that every one of you do. And my feeling is if the Arts Commission gets this, understands what we're trying to accomplish and can support it, their recommendation to the city council and even to the county council will be of great benefit. So that's my primary purpose. And really, I'm in the process of presenting this to a variety of different organizations, commissions throughout our Peninsula School District area. And, a lot of you represent other organizations. You're involved in other programs as well. So obviously that's why you make up a great arts commission. And so my ask to you today is, can I clarify this? Would you support this? And would you make a recommendation to the city council to support this?
So one more question then, as you said something that we work with other people. So the college, the Tacoma Community College wants to start, and I was going to brief this later, but they want to start like a board, with the arts and stuff. And I'm wondering if I can share this with them, these slides, and sort of see what their take is on it, and whether you want to talk to them a little bit or do the presentation. Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. I had some interaction with TCC when I think, is it Janet or Janice when she was there? And I think
it's Olga now is the
Olga,
dean continuing ed.
Yeah, so I'd be delighted to talk with them because any partners in this that we can get is terrific. And the more we share these ideas, the more they take root. So, Lynn.
Yay, thanks, Stephanie. Okay, that was a lot of information, so forgive me if I ask you something that you covered. First, will you clarify that the district you're talking about, originally I thought we were talking about a district that's within the city limits of Gig Harbor. So it sounds like the district you're defining is the entire Kitsap Peninsula and the entire Key Peninsula?
It's the school district, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's a huge district, okay.
Mhm.
So you're not just talking about taxing property to the residents of the city of Gig Harbor. We're talking about property taxes for that entire area. Okay.
Mhm.
Good. My only other question was, I think, how does this plan here support the Gig Harbor Regional Arts Center, the group that's been working for 6 7, 8, 10 years now to create a regional arts center.
To be honest with you, I haven't really discussed it with them. I saw Mark Hoppin's presentation probably a year or two ago when he was presenting that and proposing, I believe it was a public facilities district. And this is completely different because it does not create necessarily a arts center. It supports the organizations that already exist and suggests that we build upon what we already have. That's not to preclude, I mean, it's not to preclude that an art center couldn't someday be built, but you're talking, I think that budget came out to be about $58 million. So that's a lot of money. And that is not what this district would yield. This is really for operations and smaller capital projects.
And I would step in there if I seem to have lost my video again, but I'm on the board of the Arts Center Alliance. And Stephanie, you're right that our direction has been and probably will continue to be a public facilities district, because that taxing ability is ever so much greater than the cultural arts district. The cultural arts district cultural arts stadium and convention center district. They're so unrelated in my mind, but never mind.
Yeah, I know.
This would not necessarily be helpful, but because we all hold up the same sky, it would be another feather in the cap of the Gig Harbor area that says our culture and arts are important and our community supports it because arts and culture matter. So Stephanie, I do have another question. Lynn, were your questions answered? I don't want to step in on anybody else's questions.
I think so. I guess I just want to be sure that, there's a lot of momentum around the Regional Arts Center. And if we're asking taxpayers to pay more for anything, just want to be sure we're not kind of stepping on toes here where everybody could possibly be working together for the same bigger picture. Yeah. Thank you.
I would say that the Cultural Arts Center is way down the road. There is a new, we just had our annual meeting, and Ann Knapp is now the president. Mark Hoppin is still very much involved, but he's no longer the president. And we're sort of having to regroup because the property that we had intended, that we were being given on which to build the potential art center is no longer available. So our plans will be very much scaled back, and whatever happens will be many years in the future. So it's not something that's going to happen, I would say, even in the next 5 years. So I don't see that there would be any taxing conflict between a cultural arts district, cultural stadium convention center district, and the fantasy wishing for art center.
Thanks, Charlie. Kit, did you have a question?
I did. So one of your slides, first thing, I think that the only way to do this is the whole blue shaded at Peninsula school boundaries. It's not fair to the citizens when you have Ardendale, Cromwell, Arletta. I mean, you just can go on. Everyone benefits. So I think your boundary lines are correct. The slide that showed 150 per person performance space, was that an example? Because if that's not an example, then that's where you build your cultural center.
Mm-hmm.
I still had questions concerning that, but the thought of the culture center, I do agree something huge is way down the road. But is this an example, or is this actually what you would also propose as well, the 150-seat lecture hall
Yeah.
performance space on the museum campus.
Well, we are looking at right now, and this is another reason why I'm presenting this, because some of you may be contacted by our consultant, but we are working on and got funding through the National Trust for Historic Preservation to look at the museum campus specific in relationship to the parks on either side and whatnot, to do an inclusive site planning process that would inform sort of the next 10 years of the museum. So we already find that we are out of space when, you know, in non-COVID times, when we have large programs, we don't have enough room for everyone. And we don't have a proper sort of lecture hall theater space at the museum. So we do have another building that we're looking at the potential. We're not even there yet, but the potential, if it can be funded, to create a 150-seat lecture hall performance space here on the museum campus. So that is in our longer vision, but that is something that funding like this could help build. And it can also be made available to other arts and cultural organizations that need that type of space to do performances and presentations. So.
Okay, well, I think that's good because I know Mark's original plan of like $45 million and the scale down of $28 million. And I actually worried that that's going to push the small theaters out because we're bringing in big theaters unless we give them free space. And so I'm not really for that. It was also a huge amount of tax, but I think if you have to figure out how you're going to get your initial seed money, maybe the $1 million you get each year. After 5 years, there's and you only need 500,000 a year. Maybe that, after 5 years, that's 2.5 million that could go towards that 150. But the 150, I don't know where you put it on that with parking, but the point is that does solve two needs and it's not getting extravagant. And so you're doing a scale down culture arts center that is already on existing site. A lot of time, I do think that as great as the museum is, when it was originally, the concept was the new building, it's great, but they bit off more than they could chew. And it is kind of a waste of your time to spend a big part of your whole year trying to raise $300,000 to $500,000 instead of working on the museum. And so I'm sure that's frustrating. And I know I've sometimes had odds with funding, but I've said quietly to myself and even to a few other people, in many ways, I wish we would just give the museum a certain amount of money every year already in the plan, so they didn't have to ask for money every little time. And then it's just done. It's in the rules, and you don't have to ask each time. And then it's just accepted. And then it would be, be a lot easier for you. And so I think that that's good. The taxing is another way of the sales tax, but then you have grocery stores that go out of the city limits. So I think actually the property is probably better. Do you, is the museum, and maybe you won't answer this, but is the museum in trouble? I mean, I'm sure they always push to raise money, and I'm sure it's always a challenge. So I guess that's probably the best answer.
Yeah, well, I can tell you honestly that if I didn't work literally like 7 days a week, I think the museum would be in big trouble. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we are in trouble now, but if I wasn't here busting my back in to make this happen, and I don't want to say, wow, I'm so amazing. That's not it at all. It's that part of the reason why I am proposing this taxing district is because I want to see this museum thrive and I want it to grow and be the right place for this community. But I can't do this, for the rest of my life. And so I want to make sure that there is a plan and something that will allow the museum to go on for the future. So
Right.
That's really important. Yeah.
I think your time is you're very smart, and I think your time is much better used running the museum and figuring out programs and new ideas and projects than trying to raise money every year. So I do feel for you. I know that's why I get inundated with asks from special interest, because they're all struggling. They're all important.
Absolutely.
The other thing, last question, do you have, outside of Tacoma, are there any other areas close by, Paulsbo, Port Orchard, Bainbridge, that do have this?
Nobody in Washington State has initiated this particular cultural arts district. The cultural access, the sales tax one in a municipality, Olympia is going to try to put that on the ballot, I think in March, and they will be the second one. And then there may be another couple coming on board. So it can be just the city or it can be the county. And there has been some concern expressed by the Arts and Heritage Coalition of Pierce County that this would dilute their efforts at renewal in 2024. I say if you go into a shoe shop and there's only one pair of shoes, they may not fit everybody, but this gives an option to have another way of approaching funding. Samantha.
So huge proponent of supporting museums. That is also my background, but I would like some clarity on who would be eligible for this funding, because I keep seeing the word property. And so how would organizations maybe that don't have property or just artists or projects, like I'm not familiar with this. I'm very familiar with Tacoma Creates, and it supports artists, it supports art projects. Who would actually be eligible for this funding?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I have it on a slide.
Yay.
A second here. So basically, this is the proposed model. I met with Derek Young from the county to ask, sort of like from the county's perspective, how could this be set up, and is there fluidity of like the comprehensive plan and how it can be shaped. So what his recommendation was to find a model. So Oregon Historical Society, this is based on the Oregon Historical Society model. So basically you get direct operating and capital support for these primary organizations that have existing sort of privately owned, and I say private only because they're not owned by a municipality or the county, but they're operating a museum / cultural center for the public. And then any funds, because right now Fox Island and Key Peninsula operate at about $50,000 a year as their basic operating funds, but they're all volunteer operated. So all the residual funds go into a grant pool that is administered. And this has to become like a quasi municipality, sort of like the park district. So that quasi municipality would manage this grant pool, and every kind of organization that is arts related, even have, now it doesn't want to switch slides, sorry. But everybody from hands-on art to Harbor Wild Watch to the Boat Shop to Peninsula Art League, all these different organizations would have the opportunity to apply for operating or project support, and I would say sort of capital support based on what their needs are. So does that answer your question, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. So like an individual wouldn't not be able to apply for a project. You would have to be a registered nonprofit.
As I understand the legislation as it's written, that is correct.
And then in terms of like us, the Arts Commission, would we be eligible to apply for funding to support like either a public art project or redistributing that fund to individual artists through granting?
I'd have to look deeper at the legislation to see if that was possible, but in
I
theory,
doubt it.
I don't know. I mean,
Probably not, because you're under the umbrella of the city, because your organization exists through the city.
Mhm.
So now if the city's all in, maybe, but I'd actually rather, hopefully it's not, because I'd rather have you ask the city. And I was excited to know that Hands-on Art and other things could, nonprofits. So I'd rather have the city fund the art program, art committee and your group, instead of having money taken from this, but probably not, because you're under the umbrella of the city.
thanks. Lynn?
So Stephanie, does that mean you would have to be applying for funds from this from Pierce County every year?
Not necessarily, no. Because it's a special tax district, it's for a specific purpose. And so there would be direct allocations based on, I mean, we'd probably have to submit a budget every year to say, this is what we would like
Okay.
from this fund. And so that they can determine what goes to the Historical
Okay.
Society or the museum and what goes into the grant pool.
I see. Okay, so you've got some guaranteed income from it here, and then there's the grant pool. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Mhm. Yep. And I would progress the slide, but apparently it's frozen up. So I'm just going to stop sharing, but there were a few more slides, but nothing like absolutely critical. So, but I just want to say that I really appreciate your time and interest in allowing me to present this. I'm always around for, answering questions or running ideas past me and thinking about what organizations should be involved. We did have a meeting this last summer about this district idea, met with a number of people from Fox Island, from Hands on Art, from, all kinds of different local nonprofits to see if to gauge their level of interest. And obviously everybody's interested because it's really hard to get capital improvement funds. It's really hard to get operating funds. And that's the primary purpose of this particular taxing district. So, Kit.
Yeah, what are your next steps? And I think a good suggestion would be, I like that the presentation's short and that's important for council, but I would, I think you're not getting greedy with not meaning the museum, but your whole concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I actually would be, I think the value, I watch property taxes. I'm very concerned about them. I think the way you're formatting it is great. And I think, I don't know if you wanted, we've got a new council mayor coming in, but I would encourage you to actually do a short presentation with the whole council in the next couple months. So,
Okay.
and if you want to reach out to me and maybe make that work, but otherwise, outside of that, what is your next step?
Yeah, so the next steps are essentially present to council and get their support. And what that looks like essentially is if the city loves this idea and the council wants to support it, we basically would ask for a letter of support that then would go into a packet that ultimately would get presented to the Pierce County Council, asking them to approve it for the ballot. And we do have to get a certain level of voter support based on prior voter turnout and whatnot. So there's some calculations there, but the next steps basically present to council. If the city council likes it and Gig Harbor wants to be all in, then we get a letter of support. Then we go to the county council and ask them to support it and approve it for the ballot. In between all that, we do some surveys and polls to see whether our actual constituents would support this if it were to show up on the ballot. And if so, what are the things they feel are most important? So those are really the next steps. And then after the county council would approve it, then it would have to go on to the voter ballot. And then of course it would have to pass by a certain margin in order to get enacted.
Right.
That's probably a year-long process.
It's probably the 60% because I know when the school levy is that way, and when we raised the sales tax for infrastructure, it was 60%. And one thing just to keep in mind, we were turned down the first year on the infrastructure, the 2/10 of a tax,
Mhm.
but I was going to do it at the next voting, but then the school district was doing theirs, so we waited, not to hurt them.
Mhm.
So that's important to gauge what else is they're voting on and try to not do it at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, and there are a couple of what I'd call, potential not barriers, but hurdles. One is that, this can be a 1-year tax or it can be a 6-year tax. We would be, presenting a 6-year tax so that there's some longevity and you can actually make some, accomplishments in that time period. And then there's also, that challenge of, people not necessarily wanting to support things with property tax. So, we can see how it goes. And those initial surveys and polls will give us a really good idea whether, people in our area will actually support this and at what level. So, and we are trying to be very modest in the ask so that it's not a huge burden for anybody. And it's easy to say that, if it's only $50 a year, I certainly as a homeowner and I would support it, but I'm not everybody. So, but I believe that arts and culture are like the essence of our lives. So we got to do what we can to make sure they're out there. So, yeah. But all right, if there's if there's no other questions, I will let you get back to your meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate your time. Yeah. If you,
I assume that everyone, I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
no, you go ahead, Charlie.
Okay. Okay. I'm assuming that we are through with questions on this topic. I would like to have us put this on a future agenda so that we can, as a commission, discuss it and see where we go with regard to potential endorsement for this. I can see that it could be very, very beneficial to a lot of organizations. And I see that there are, as Stephanie says, hurdles to jump through, but I think it really is worth at least our considering. So if no one objects, Josh, could we put this on our agenda for an upcoming meeting?
What are you putting on the agenda though? I mean, what is the topic or what is the point of what are you putting on there? How are you gonna, what is the discussion gonna be?
I would just like us to, as a commission, Stephanie has asked us basically for our endorsement of this. Am I right, Stephanie?
Yeah. Yeah. Your endorsement or recommendation to the council. Mhm.
So
Right.
I think,
And-
yeah, so I think it's important that we discuss it and decide how we want to proceed as a commission.
Stephanie, are you able to share your slides, your PowerPoint deck with Josh so that he can email that out to all of us?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I would think you would want to discuss it and quite slowly with many questions going back and forth, because if Stephanie's gonna go to council, having, for example, she doesn't have your support, she just doesn't say anything. That's what you do, you're not lying if you just don't always say everything. But going with the support says a lot. So, but that means for you to take a deep dive look at it. And that's going to take more than one meeting and a lot of back and forth to, look at other districts and other places, even if it's other states, and dig down deep into questions so that when it goes to council, you've figured all those out.
Linda, does that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I'm just wondering what our role is gonna be. Is it just gonna be to continue to discuss this? But that's what I'm saying, I think the mayor did a little bit more in depth there, a little bit more discussion.
I
just
see.
didn't know what the topic, what you putting on the agenda, what topic is it gonna be?
I see our role as discussing this and then being able to either say yes or no to Stephanie's request for our quote endorsement unquote that she can include when she goes to present it to city council. Does another commissioner have something else that they want to add to that?
Charlie, would a letter of would an endorsement essentially be a letter of support from the Arts Commission?
I believe that would be very, very adequate. Stephanie, does that sound?
That sounds great. Perfect.
Okay. So Linda, the goal of our discussion will be either to agree to send a letter of endorsement to the museum and the council on behalf of Stephanie's proposal, or to decide that we don't support it and then not send a letter.
Yep, that's better. And then we just finished our budget. Does this have any budget effect?
None whatsoever.
I would suggest working with Stephanie on like
Exactly.
working backwards on a time because of the certain times a year. So let's just say, so I think the county would pay for this. I'm not sure, but putting something on the tax on the ballot is not cheap. And you want to do it at the same time. You get more voter on a presidential, a lot more. So, I think you need to see with Stephanie when if you support it, when you want to do it. Like, let's just say and you're going to have multiple meetings. So let's just say it's April 2023. Then you work back, because what you want to do is probably do a survey monkey to the whole district. To say what do you like about this? What could we do better, so that you have the buy-in. You think you have the buy-in before you go out to the voters. The sales tax increase we had to do twice, and so you plan when you really want this to done. Then you work backwards to the day. You might have to have 3-6 months for the art commission to look at this, and so you do a survey monkey, which are really inexpensive. So you get the buy-in from the different people, and maybe fine tune a little bit more to what their needs are. So that's just some thoughts.
Yeah. Well, and just to, help clarify, this isn't really anything that the Arts Commission would have to take action on, except for to say yay or nay, support to the city council or not. Really, what we would be doing is forming a committee that, and we've already begun that process with some other organizations that would be potential beneficiaries of this. And that working group would be the ones that would be doing the surveys and the polls. So I'm not asking for, the Arts Commission to take on any of those tasks, really just to hopefully to be proponents and supporters of this initiative. So.
Yep, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Mhm.
Lynn,
Can't help but think of a big survey that we did, Charlie, that you put together for the, putting together the comprehensive portion of, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say.
Our arts and culture amendment for the comp plan. Yes.
Thank you.
Something similar to that. Yeah. And Stephanie was one. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Stephanie, so you were working on that. I mean, that's a huge wealth of information and community input, as far, that you can probably replicate some of that within a survey monkey, just to do your due diligence for this particular project. But I mean, I think I was thinking of it as an Arts Commission, how we're responsible to represent the community. And I mean, we can only represent the city of Gig Harbor and taxpayers here, but so I was thinking of that particular survey that's already been done, and how there's generally, it's easy to say there's overwhelming support for arts and culture here, and how do we support that, which is,
I'm glad you brought that up, Lynn, because I think that would be a really good primary source to refer back to, like even in the Arts Commission's letter, referring back to that survey and
Right.
the data that was collected there could be very, very helpful and very beneficial.
Yeah.
So it's not just saying, oh, we like this idea and this county or the city council should support it, but here's why. And so I thought that's a great idea. I'd love to see that included.
Yeah, we could probably pull some quotes from that or comments from that, right? And also, is there anything similar that's been done in like on the Kitsap Peninsula, in any of those places? Like, what sort of community input have they received that you could use that's still within that cultural district?
Yeah, I've looked at Bainbridge a bit, talking with them a little bit about how their funding, because they've got their art museum and their kids museum all and Bainbridge Historical Society. They've got it all within, their own area, and they also are pretty active with lodging tax on Bainbridge. So that's a good example. But I talked to the director of the Bainbridge Island Historical Society, because she's really interested in this particular program for their area, and she wanted to know, could it be initiated countywide? And because Kitsap's mostly rural, and so this is a great example of another sort of rural area that could do a lot with this particular taxing district strategy to support their organizations. So,
Right. I'm so glad that you've talked to Bainbridge Island, because they were one of the arts and culture elements that we looked at in our community, as you know, Stephanie, for some guidelines and ideas of how we could proceed. And I do
Also-
have the name. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Robin.
I was gonna add in that Bainbridge Island also just got awarded a cultural creative arts initiative. They're now considered a creative arts district by the state of Washington, as did Olympia. And although, as Stephanie pointed out, there's no money associated with it, it does open it up for funding. And just while I'm thinking of it, when the Arts Center got brought up earlier, I think the point of a cultural arts district is more to get everybody in the area to get on the same page, which is what you were asking about. It's more of a planning tool. So I do think, that's also something that could go hand in hand with this. And it helps kind of solidify the community around one message, which I think would be very important. So thanks, Charlie.
agreed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin. Any other, Stephanie, you want to say something else? Sorry.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion on this then? All right. Thank you very much, Stephanie. This was very informative. What a good presentation. I think we learned a lot, and I think we have a lot of food for thought. We will be putting this on an agenda for a future Arts Commission meeting, and we'll let you know the conclusion that we come to. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will share the slide deck with Josh. And just so you're aware, there is a slide at the end that talks a little bit about the requirements for voter turnout as well as timelines. So you'll be able to see all those when you go through that deck. All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Stephanie. Wonderful. Well, my camera, as you can see, is being very wonky. So let us move on to our discussion items. We have only one at this point, and that is our Arbor Art Project. Lynn, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, we have an unprecedented 2 applicants for the Arbor Art. Woohoo!
Dang.
Well, okay. Hey, Josh, if I'm not mistaken, the application from George Kenny came in past our deadline, right?
It came in the mail yesterday, so it's kind of up to you if you want to consider it or not.
Yeah.
There's no
Josh,
law
what
that says
was
you can't.
Josh, what was the postmark on it?
I don't remember. I don't have the envelope with me now, but there was no mail on the 11th, so it couldn't have been delivered on the deadline day because of the holiday.
Okay.
So that may have been a factor.
Yeah. Okay, has everybody looked at the applications?
I didn't see the second one. I just saw George's. So was the second one further on down?
George's is the second one that's in our packet.
Oh, okay.
It's
okay.
the last page. George submitted 1 page. And then has a reference to his Facebook page for recent photos. So I can start with George because George Kenny is the carver that has done the previous 2 Arbor Art sites. This proposal, he's saying he would use some students, and it's something that I spoke with him about before. Is we were just discussing options for this project. We discussed how it would be possible to incorporate some students of his into working with him and seeing one of these city projects come to life. So that's George Kenny. His project estimate is $4,000 in 1 day, which that's a lot of work for 1 day, but and we are familiar with his, what he's done on our other 2 sites. So the other applicant, I don't know if you're familiar with JMS Wood Sculpting, but that is Jeff Samadowski, who is a world famous carver, award-winning. He used to live here in Gig Harbor. He had his shop right on the 16. So if you don't recognize his name, you probably remember his shop he had right on the 16. He used to have huge sculptures of horses up there. He's now moved out to McCleary, Washington. But from the beginning of the Arbor Art Project, Jeff has been interested in participating. And this is his first application for this project. He estimates it would take him 2 days. I also consider he's coming from McCleary. I think that's at least an hour drive one way for him, for the total budget of $5,500. I don't know what Jeff would normally charge for a project like this, but I can tell you this is below his normal pay rate. He's excited to do something. He's excited to be part of the project, and he's excited to do, contribute part of his time to the city for this. So he included an example, a photo of one of his eagles in progress, and a rough sketch of how that would sort of work with our current snag. So
Lynn, do you mind
yeah.
sharing? I couldn't find it. I don't see it. I
Oh,
don't.
okay. Do you have the packet? Okay. If you scroll down
Yeah.
the packet, Josh, if you can share it, Josh, that would be great.
Yes, let me pull it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff Samadowski did the elaborate carving that's in Crescent Creek Park.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope
know.
you guys have all seen that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was just an example of something that he's done, and he would create a similar piece here. He did say he's, he's envisioning an eagle right now because of the shape of that snag and all that. He did say that, once he's there, he might be inspired to do something else. I think this is what he's coming to the table with, this idea, but he doesn't like to be confined to a box if something inspires him creatively on the spot. And in fact, his sculpture at Crescent Creek was meant to be, I think, less complex than it was, but he was on a roll and he kept seeing more creatures coming to life through it. And he donated a lot of his time to bringing what he thought it needed to it. So we're not holding him to this, this exact thing. I'll let him know if he gets the job, he needs to communicate with us if he's seeing something else. He's planning to visit the site first if he gets awarded this project, to take a closer look at the viability of the snag for one, and also just so he can just see the exact size and scope of it. So what do you think?
How do we make our decision?
Let's talk about it. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
My only concern is that if because it sounds like we're sort of eliminating George as a possibility because it wasn't in the city's mailbox by 4:30 on the 11th. As Josh pointed out, that was a holiday. There was no mail delivery. But so if his postmark was with it, would have been, like last Friday, or probably even Saturday. If his postmark was prior to the deadline, it seems to me that we have to honor it. The reason I say that is because those of you who were involved in the selection of the artist for the Ansich Waterfront Park will recall that a number of applications were sent through the mail and they were delayed. And we did not receive them in hand by the deadline, but they had been postmarked in time for that deadline, before the deadline. So, and we decided that at that time to give them consideration. So I'm saying if George's postmark was within the deadline, I would recommend that we at least consider it.
Yeah, I did not mean in any way to imply we weren't going to consider George's application. I wanted to verify if it was late, or I totally didn't realize the 11th was a holiday, Yeah, that probably would have changed the deadline. But I think it's completely fair that we absolutely consider George's application. Yeah.
Do we go by price? My opinion
No.
is we got somebody new here, and it would be a nice thing, to have two artists, And the other thing is we don't want to exclude George, make sure he doesn't get any hurt feelings if we say we don't want him this time, and that'll be sure to offer again. But, I'm all for a new guy, and I have seen this guy's stuff and it's beautiful. And I wasn't aware he had moved, but I wondered where all his pieces had gone. He moved them too.
Yeah, he moved his whole operation. I have, from the beginning, we talked about encouraging variety of artists. I love what George has done. I love that he's always anxious to apply for the project. So,
and he includes students.
Yeah. So I'm a little biased this time around because I'm excited that we got another applicant, and I've always been trying to reel in Jeff Samadowski's interest here. So just want to know what you all think.
Samantha had her hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I really like about JMS proposal is that it's fully in the round. It's a 3-dimensional carving, and all of George's are really embedded into the tree structure, the snag structure. And so I think that this proposal not only brings in a new artistic person, but also really diversifies what's possible with those snags. That would be my vote.
He preserves his stuff though too. So does he know that we're going to let it rot away?
Yes, he does. And also, Samantha, I'll just point out that George did on the Arbor Art site number 1, he did an eagle that's on top of the snag. So that's more 3-dimensional. And also on the site number 2, he did a woodpecker and a little sort of, and then there's on one of the snags like a little cottage.
I'm familiar with all of them, but to turn the whole snag into one 3-dimensional walk around piece is really different.
Got it. Okay.
Small little things on top of a snag.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. What's our, I'm not remembering what our budget is on this. Is it 4,000?
5,500.
Oh, so our budget is 55. Thank you. So other discussion? Jennifer?
I also agree with Samantha on having, I think, another artist and another perspective coming in to work on the snags is really nice, since we have 2 other rounds of the project with the other artist. And then also JMS proposed an animal that's native to here. The George Kinney one, the turtle proposal, which I don't think was set in stone or wood. But that isn't really a native animal, the salmon are. And if we're wanting to represent things that are from this area, that might be a consideration also.
Yeah. I think George will be open to notes about that. It looks like they were just kind of considering a sea turtle, something that would kind of work there, which could be, it could be a harbor seal or things like that too. I think
I can see the shape kind of.
we could ask him to consider something else. Yeah.
Robin.
Yeah, hi. I would just say that I agree with Samantha's comments and also with Linda. I like the idea of having another artist in the mix. I think we could do it without hurting George's feelings, of other opportunities. But he's done 2 for us, and it would be nice to have just add a new artist to the mix. And also I like his proposal as well. Or like such an artist, see what happens when he gets to the snag as it speaks to him. That I love that. But that's kind of my feeling.
Excellent. Is there other discussion? In which case, may I have a motion, one way or the other?
I'll make a motion that we approve to move forward with a contract for JMS wood sculpture. Did I do that motion right?
Sounds
And
good.
I'll second it.
All right. So we have a motion moved and seconded to move forward with a contract for Jeff Samadowski for to create a sculpture from the designated snag in Grandview Forest. Is there other discussion from the council? I mean, from the commission, I'm sorry. I just elevated us. Hearing none, may I, let's say all in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Linda, okay. It looks to be unanimous. So yay, congratulations. Lynn, will you instruct Jeff to work with Josh to get the contract going? Josh, do you have any questions?
I can prepare the contract just based on the ones we did the last 2 years.
What
Lynn, do
about
you want to reach out to the 2 applicants and let them know?
Yeah,
Okay.
about insurance, that last thing that we did the last time, remember that we had to make sure that they had insurance. This
Yes.
guy's got insurance to work at that site too.
I will take care of all that.
Okay, make sure. Okay, perfect.
Oh, I will say, I know Jeff, he talked to me about this and he said he's uncertain about giving us this very specific date when he can do it. He's got to juggle things around. The guy's busy through like next year. And so I said you'd have to give us as much advance notice as you can. But anyway, just so you guys know, he's now going to have to kind of wiggle things around in order to schedule a couple days to be up here to do this. So I'll let you know when he, or maybe Josh will, or I don't, who we'll have to know exactly when the date will be, because I think it would be a great opportunity for the marketing department as well to promote it and maybe have people be able to watch it, watch while he carves. So it's a great spectator sport.
No kidding. Yeah, thank you. Lynn, thank you so much once again for shepherding this wonderful project through. This project is one that has turned out to be one that is often referred to, has been often referred to when we've been working on the comprehensive plan and other Gig Harbor Arts Commission functions. So this has turned out to be just a marvelous project that has gotten lots of attention. I think is very popular.
Well, yeah, thanks. I am super excited about it. We have a lack of snags, so we're running out of inventory. But and I will say I reached out to
Let's
the
cut down more trees.
yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I reached out to the Northwest Carvers Association. I didn't hear anything back, so it's just, we need to spread the word some more somehow. If anybody's got ideas how, I don't know how we're going to do this next year, but be on the lookout for more snags. Thanks.
Excellent. We'll all keep our eyes open. Okay, commissioner comments. I see that the arts and culture element is on the agenda for me. Robin and I met with the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago. Robin, do you want to talk about that?
Well, Charlie and I kind of broke some rules. We didn't know we weren't supposed to comment, but they started asking us questions. So we started answering them. But I would have to say that we need to do some work when we present on the 21st. Although I will say, Charlie, there were several people on the commission who just didn't get why we needed this. And so since we weren't really doing an official presentation, we were not, within the realm of explaining a lot of details. I will also say that there were several people who didn't say anything. And so we really don't know how they feel. They didn't seem particularly vociferous one way or the other. It was just, I'd say, 2 people really who were quite vocal, Charlie.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they, as Robin said, it appeared that they just didn't get it. One of them said, why do we need this? Why do we need an arts and culture element in our comprehensive plan? I've been thinking about it, and I think that they envision their experience with comp plan amendments are things that relate to infrastructure, like building code and traffic patterns. And to think outside of that infrastructure box is a totally new experience for them. And I think it has kind of challenged them. There will be a public hearing on the 21st of this month, which is a week from tomorrow. I believe it's 5 o'clock. This is our opportunity to encourage everyone we know that is an art supporter or an artist to write a letter of support to the to Carl DeSimis, I guess, right, Josh?
I believe so. I haven't seen the advertisement for that public hearing yet.
I haven't seen the meeting announcement yet, but I would assume it's to Carl, but at any rate, we really, really need to muster the troops and to make a strong showing in favor of this amendment. And I've gotten the idea that written comments remain a visible part of the record, whereas public comments, verbal comments, although they're on tape and may be referred to, so-and-so also commented in minutes of a meeting, the written comment becomes a permanent visible part of the record. So I'm going to be encouraging people not just to speak out at the meeting, but to send a letter of support as well and ask that it be read at the meeting. And that's sort of a double way to get attention. So I'll send some details to all of you in an email right after this meeting. But it's absolutely critical that we have a strong showing on the 21st in favor of this amendment, proposed amendment.
Yeah, and I would underscore what Charlie said is right, that they're used to dealing with infrastructure. So they were like, the main question for the two was, well, what's this going to cost the city? And we're said, well, it's not going to cost the city anything. I mean, it's already within the budget that of what we have. We're just, what we want to do is make a statement, and that part of this is economically driven. And I still need to follow up with some data from the state about how the arts adds economic growth to cities, and how much gets spent in restaurants and all of that. But the thing, and then somebody focused on the 1% tax, which was, they got the whole big proposal, which was just something I said we wanted to look into. That was not something that was part of anything official. So we need to really do a real crisp presentation that Charlie and I will work on. But also, I think it's important that we make it real for the two vocal people, explaining to them, they were like, well, this just seems like a lot of fancy words. Well, it's not. It's about, positioning the cultural and and artistic elements in our city, and that it's something we value. So we'll pull out some of the stats from our survey. We'll pull out some economic stats, all of those things.
Hey, Robin, can I add, just, see, that's what I have problem with too. I think maybe what they need to see is that, I don't want to say an example, and it's kind of, I'm getting muddled up here again, but I think they need to see how we're going to apply this, like he said, maybe it's fancy words, but that is, our concept. But what is this money or whatever it is that's coming in? How are we going to use it? How is the Arts Council going to use this, and what are we going to do with it? See, that's what I tried to put that into words. I think maybe it's been going through my head here, I don't know whether you've heard about this, Savannah College of Art and Design, and then TAUS. Those are, I don't know, maybe my models. I don't know if they're yours, but how did those people, especially the SCAD, I mean, they started from a dairy, they brought in all kinds of stuff. So maybe we just need to give them more of a concept, what are we going to use this for? I mean, I'm excited about this. I think it's a wonderful thing, but how do we put this in words so that they can understand it? And how is it our budget item, I guess? That's what I was saying before.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
I think that's a really good point. I hear what you're saying, Linda, and I think that we really need to really spell it out. I mean, the budget is, this budget has been reinstated a few years ago, but we need to say, here's what it gets used for, here's the reach, but also what you're saying is, what is it matter to the community? And I think there's other local examples to, play off of what Charlie was saying that we can use. SCAD it's a school
Far
so
away.
We'll I'll just confuse them. So you're starting a school. So we're like, no. But I think that there's ways, like Bainbridge Island has some good examples, Olympia, even Paulsbo. We try to use smaller cities, because when you say Seattle and Tacoma, that just sends up other flares. So I hear what you're saying, and we will look at that, because I think we just need to be like, here's what it does, right? Here's the facts.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Are you speaking facts as in how it saves the city's money, right? Like, how, I wonder if, because that's the bottom line, right? Because if somebody says, well, what's the purpose? Like, why would we do this? And I would think, well, why not? Like, there's no downside to doing this, right? But what's the upside? They want to see the bottom line is what's in it for us. And what that means is money-wise, right? So I think if you really talk about how this designation can, or not, well, it's not designation, that's not the right thing, but this legitimizing arts and culture in our comp plan can give us more access to money, right? From all these different sources. And hey, if we had this designation, and this is all hypothetical hearsay, you know, if we'd had this designation, maybe we could have accessed more funding for the restoration of the Ansich Net Shed or Ansich Park, or is there anything that, like, in our past that cost the city money, where we could have stepped up and said we could have, you know, we've missed opportunities by not having this in our comp plan at this point.
point.
So
That's great, Lynn.
also, what's up with our consultant? Like, I think he would have some angle on this, because I think it's great in the opening remarks to address these things. Like, people are saying, well, what's in it for us? And you know, why not? Like, why wouldn't we do this anyway? So yeah, what's up with the consultant?
He is still part of it. Actually, he was very, very supportive. He got it immediately.
Yeah.
And rewrote took what we had originally submitted and embellished it quite a lot. Added some strong points that made points stronger that we had made in our original application. As Katrina explained to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission, i.e. Carl and Katrina, I mean the city staff, the planning department, reformatted the element and changed the language to reflect language in other in other comp plan elements. So at this point, it reads very much like every other element, like the infrastructure element and so forth in the comp plan. And it lacks any kind of passion,
Nuance.
creativity, the kinds of things that arts and culture bring to our spirits. So, and Katrina was very clear in that they had reformatted and changed language to coincide with other comp plan elements.
So I think
So
they also got the original plan, she said too, but I don't think, you know, I mean, they've got a lot to go through and I doubt that they really read it very deeply. So that's our opportunity when we speak with them to hit some high notes there.
And also included in their packet was the entire survey results, all the graphs and, you know, multicolored graphs and then executive summary. And I'm not sure that they even read that, in spite of the fact that it's in glorious living color. But this is the opportunity of us as commissioners and our friends and relations and other art supporters to speak on behalf, to help them understand, to help the Planning Commission and the public understand the importance of this. And that it's, and yes, and this is where Robin's research will, I think, be very strong, speak very strongly. The fact that arts and cultural activities are a real strong economic driver. Cultural tourism and art tourism are very strong economic drivers wherever they exist. And Robin, I think the Arts WA probably has a lot of information about that. I know we do have some, available that we used when we were putting together our proposed element. It's a little bit dated. I think it's like 2013 or 15, but but still, it's very valid. And
Well, and this,
And-
I have some updated data, so that just came out. So we'll throw that in. We have what, 5 minutes, Charlie?
well, everybody that speaks has 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So maybe we'll do you speak and I speak. Anybody else? Can we take up 20 minutes? Yeah.
Are you talking about public hearings?
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Well, no, they
they-
extended it to 5 for us.
Oh.
Yeah, we do have 3, but the presentation is 3 minutes. It's typically 3, but they extended it to 5 for us.
Right. Maybe that just tells them they need more information. So it tells us they need more information.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll cram it all in.
Yeah. Any other questions about that? I'll send you in. Yes, Samantha, go ahead.
Just, I mean, like to your point that they didn't read it and that our thing got reformatted, I think that it's a huge ask to ask people to read, pages and
Yeah.
pages of the survey. I'm struggling, I think, with some of the new commissioners because we weren't involved in developing this. Like, I need the high level, like, what are the 3 reasons we're supporting this? And what are the 3 things it's going to do? And I think, like, I haven't ever heard it condensed like that because I don't think people can hold more than that. And I think that's what the commission and these city officers or whomever you presented to the other night are asking for. I haven't heard it, which means I can't advocate for it in that succinct way. So is that something that we have, or is that something that I just offer that as feedback as you prepare? I would also offer that to Stephanie based on her presentation, because for her to have talked for 20 minutes and then Linda say, why are you even presenting this? Like, we need to hit them over the head. Like, why are we here? What do we want? And how does this benefit the city? Like 3 bullets. And
Thank
then
you.
if there's another 3 bullets to do that. That's great. But there seems to be a lot of question about why are we even doing this? And we don't want that question left on anybody's mind at the end of your 6 minutes or whatever you have.
Good, very good points. Thank you.
I think we'll just start with, why are we here?
Exactly. Yes. Right. Any other questions or discussion from commissioners on that? Tony, you've been patiently sitting here through the whole meeting. Tell us why you're here. Welcome, Tony. You're on.
I am just here to make sure I know what it is you folks are talking about and provide any guidance and advice that I can. But so far with this meeting, you guys are doing fantastic. And I was very curious about the proposal on the arts district that Stephanie gave us. So now I have been educated as to what that is. And so when I'm asked by council members or other city staff what this is all about, I can actually answer the questions.
Lynn?
To just circle back to that, the consultant that's working on the comprehensive plan, is he still working with us?
I believe he will be present at the public hearing.
I believe so.
Okay. Do you know if we're gonna get, yeah, that's before our next meeting. So we're not gonna get an update from him. Because I was wondering if he could help you guys, Charlie and Robin, to, help you with that portion that we're talking about as far as how to more strongly present the key points and hit them over the head with that before you lose them after 30 seconds,
Before you contact the consultant, I would suggest you contact Carl and let him know that you'd like to speak with the consultant, and then he can make that happen for you.
Thank you.
Great.
That's a great suggestion. And we'll see, we've got limited time as always. But I'll tap I'll channel some of my old Microsoft presentation style, which should work. I'll dismiss with the flowery and just go to the, we'll
Go
just
right to the meat.
go right to the meat, and then know that we'll be interrupted at some point. So that's how it used to go there. So
Exactly.
I
Jennifer,
have a question. So the last time we met with a consultant, we had input and then there was a reworking, if I understand correctly, of some of the language. Do we have access to that reworked plan? Because I don't know that I've seen that.
I will send you all the entire packet that
Okay.
was presented to the Planning Commission,
Okay, that'd be great.
which includes our original proposed element, plus the consultant's reworking of it, plus the final draft that has been reworked yet again by the planning department.
Okay,
So and it also has the survey and it's the whole ball of wax.
That'd be
So
great.
I will send that to everyone.
thank you.
So to clarify, the proposal had 3 drafts of our plan in it. No wonder
Yes.
everybody's confused. Like, yeah, we just need to streamline that.
Well, I mean, that's what the planning department presented to the planning commission. So I guess traditionally you give all the background information. The packet also included the written comments that were given before the city council in December, I think, when they moved this forward into this year's planning department docket. So we'll send you the whole packet. Okay.
Because this is rolling through my head, is there any downside to this becoming a part of the comprehensive plan? Because I keep thinking that there's literally no downside. I mean, what would be an objection to this? There's a little bit of staff time. We're already paying a consultant. Once it's in the comp plan, there's no other
really is
stress
no-
on staff
Yeah, there really is no downside.
Okay.
The Arts Commission's budget is approved by the city council every year. So this isn't asking for,
Right.
for us to hire a whole new person to be exclusively devoted to the Arts Commission work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the
Trying to see if there's any
consultant-
objections. Yeah.
No, I don't think, Robin, do you think there are any?
no, I don't. I think part of it isn't part of this that we want to come out from underneath the Parks Commission. I think that's something that maybe they're like, well, why do you need to be separate?
What did they say to you then? Was it just clarification? They didn't really object, right?
Well, it wasn't a vote meeting. It was more, yeah. So no, there were just some feelings of like, well, why is this needed? And is it going to cost us money? And no. And so I think they were more confused, and I think we just need to
And maybe
straighten it
that's
out. That's all.
Start
Okay.
from there. Then you say, Washington is offering to give us money, and we just have to incorporate that into our planning and etc. I guess start right from the beginning. Here's money.
So I would strongly suggest that you give them a written comment in addition to commenting at the public hearing itself, and get that written comment to them in advance. And if there's any ask that you have with regards to the element that is in front of them, if you want to reword it, if you want something added, if you want something taken out, be very specific as to what you want them to do. Because if you ask them to do that at the meeting without them having ever seen what you're proposing, then they'll just be confused and they may not do anything at all. But if you get it to them in advance and they can think about it, staff can then be ready to deal with that kind of a revision if that's what the commission wants to pursue to do.
All right, that's helpful. We did that when I did this in Bellevue. Actually, we did a written, just a one pager actually is all you really need.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't want to get too long and deep
Yeah.
and verbose.
So thank you for suggesting that.
And I can send everyone a link to the recording of the Planning Commission meeting at which this was discussed also, so that you can at least have access to hearing verbatim what the comments were from the planning commissioners, if you're interested in that.
It's not that long. They kicked us off after a while.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
they
they were
had
done
other
with us. It
business.
wasn't, I'm being, they weren't rude. They just were moving on to another topic. So,
Right. Okay, any other commissioner comments? Linda, do you have anything to report on the upcoming Tacoma Community College Writers Conference?
Well, I don't have so much about the conference. You know, we all know that that's coming up, but I have talked to Olga. She is the Dean of Continuing Ed. She wants to create a board, and this is where I was talking to Stephanie earlier, you know, like, I think this is all kind of pulling together here, you know, like what are we gonna talk about or incorporate into our arts culture here? Anyway, she wants to start a board, you know, pull in a bunch of people to talk about how we can, you know, develop the college and put the college into all of our plans. And I see that as bringing in to our plan, like the students and their art and their literature, and how can the college offer whatever they do to us. But that's why I wanted to, you know, I missed that briefing, so I wasn't really sure what she talked to you all about. How do you all think that the college can work, and what can I bring back to her? What do we see the college? You know, one of the things that popped into my mind is, God, they've got a lot of land out there. Why couldn't we use some of that stuff for our arts culture too? So, you know, I think this is going to be a big thing, and I'm glad to see that she's involved. She seems like a real progressive thinker. I really enjoyed her talking to her. But how do we see that the college has given us something, or we can give back to them for growth for their students or whatever else? You know, we all know that the writers conference is coming up. I don't know whether we can advertise it or put it into our minutes, but I don't know. Go ahead, Lynn.
I don't really have any specific answers, but years ago, I was involved with another commissioner. Charlie, do you remember, was it Linda? Another Linda that was committed to bringing the A into the STEM to make it STEAM. And we met with the Peninsula School District Superintendent and went on a couple tours of some of the schools. And we talked about the value of adding the A for arts into their STEM program, which is what science, technology, engineering, and math. So, and adding A for STEAM, which isn't unusual, but I don't think they really practice that. He was all for it. And then we never talked about it again. He's no longer the superintendent. I don't know. There was no concrete suggestions, right? It was just like, we started talking about arts as part of, you know, the STEM curriculum and how it was important to promote it as STEAM. And, you know, that involves a lot more than just us, but I don't really know what is traditional in working with schools, but it's a great resource of students. So it'd be wonderful to cultivate some kind of relationship there.
Right. And you know, I mentioned too that we've got that the grant, you know, that anybody student can apply for a grant, you know. Well, anyway, I did mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of things. Lynn, I think it might have been, maybe I was one of the people you're thinking of, because I came and talked for Harbor Wild Watch about some of their art activities for STEM becoming STEAM, back when the public school system was looking at expanding that a little bit.
You came to the Arts Commission,
Yeah.
right? Oh, yeah,
Before I was
yeah. Okay,
on-
you
I was
came to
on.
us. There was another commissioner. I wonder if she had, I don't
It
know
was
how that,
Laura Burl.
Laura, okay. And she and I went to the
Laura.
public school superintendent. But yeah, right, Jennifer, thank you for reminding me.
But you know, the other thing, and they're doing this a little bit at my kids' school, I think they have like high school graduates and maybe they're college students. And I think in the case of my kids' school, they're alumni also, but doing after-school arts programs that kids can opt into. And, you know, it's everything from writing to digital, you know, like programming type stuff, but for like art for games and things like that, or filmmaking, all sorts of different things. It's really whoever they can procure teachers for, really. But it's kind of nice having these young adults primarily that are coming in and kind of being mentors for the elementary and middle school age students, mostly in the arts program. And so I don't know, Linda, if that's something, you know, as Tacoma Community College develops their programs in the arts, if maybe that's, you know, developing those partnerships for more multi-generational type things.
Yeah, and
Tony,
then like I said, her Stephanie's briefing, I want to share with Olga, you know, because you know, that's about the arts culture. So I want to talk to her about that, you know, as well.
Absolutely.
I think that I sort of hear perhaps two things that we can do. One is to put a discussion item on our Arts Commission agenda about this very topic. How can the Arts Commission reach out to the school system, to TCC, to the library, and see if there are ways that we can cross-pollinate to support art programs that already exist, or perhaps brainstorm with them other opportunities. So that could be one thing, having putting that on the agenda as a discussion item. And the other thing I think might be appropriate is for us to invite Olga to present to the Arts Commission once she has her idea for this Citizens Committee more formulated, so that we can hear directly from her what her plan is, and know more how we as the commission might be able to support that, just as we did with Stephanie this morning. So does that, anyone object to those two things?
All
Okay,
right.
so Josh, let's put something like that on the agenda for the next meeting, and we can see where it goes.
I will add that.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have 2 minutes and 20 seconds before we all turn into pumpkins. Any other commissioner comments or things to be aware of? Well, thank you all very much. I had thought this would be a short meeting. It's turned into a very rich and interesting and educational meeting, I think. So with no further ado, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
And a second. That was Lynn. And
Jennifer.
do you want to keep going? Jennifer, did you second?
I did, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I assume we are all in favor of this. So our next meeting is November 10th. Meanwhile, please send comments to the Planning Commission for the public hearing on our arts and culture element. Thank you all very much. Thanks for all you do. And happy Halloween.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.